Just wanted to let everybody in the room know. I guess first I'll introduce myself. My name is Mary Sunderland. I'm the Director of Research and Education at the Foundation Fighting Blindness. And again, we were just so proud to have the opportunity to be involved with this trial, which really generated some important new knowledge that's going to keep fueling us forward for years to come. So thank you, Ian. And I do recognize that not everybody in the room can see the slides. Some of the presenters today will be sharing slides, but I've reminded everybody that, of course, not everybody can see them. So if you can't see the slides, you're not missing anything. But I do also want to let you know that we've arranged to make these slides available. And so if you'd like to look at them after the fact and put them through a screen reader, we can do that as well. So now I've actually prepared kind of long introductions about everybody in the patient registry, but I think you'd rather hear from them than hear me introduce them, because Sharon already did a wonderful job really highlighting how happy we are that you're taking your time to be here with us today. What we're going to discuss during this panel discussion is something that Dr. MacDonald mentioned in his earlier talk called the Foundation Fighting Blindness Patient Registry. And Sharon also mentioned it during her introduction, that it's something that Dr. Héon thought about. I was trying to look through the historical files, and I think this kind of came into being in 2004. But maybe you have an earlier date in mind. So it's something that really was thought about before, Ian said gene therapies were still a pipe dream 10 years ago. So this was like 14 years ago. Dr. Héon was thinking, hey, maybe a patient registry could really help to drive research forward and then help to connect patients to these trials, which we know and we believe are going to be happening in the future. So our goal today is to really showcase the critical importance that the registry has played and continues to play in driving the future of inherited retinal disease research. And I also hope that it can help to clarify any questions that you might have about the registry, how you can get involved and begin the enrollment process if you haven't already. So I'm going to start off this session with a question for Dr. Héon. So, do we have the handheld mics over there? We do. I was hoping that you could start with a little story for our audience here today about, how did the registry come into your head 14 years ago, and really what motivated you to start things back in 2004?
I don't remember when. Is it on?
Yes.
Well, it's sort of through talking with colleagues, and our country is so vast, and there's so few of us who are trained to deal with this patient population. So you see half of them here, and so there's 6 of us in the country trained to deal with patients with inherited retinal disease, and over half of us are over the age of 55, and so it's a really small community. We've been at it for a long time. And the only way we can sort of get connected was through creating a registry and trying to connect ourselves to the patients and know who's where and who's working on what. And I didn't think of it alone. It really just came through discussions with my colleagues, and you're giving me too much credit. But, actually, I didn't want to do the registry. I got stuck with it. So never think of something. But it's been a great tool, and we're very proud of our registry because, we think it's the best.
It's the best.
And
for sure.
We have over 1,000 patients in the registry, and there's different types of registries in the world. We opted for data entry through the physician, so we would at least have clear documentation of the characterization of the patients, and it's now being solicited by many agencies worldwide. it's brought us, clinicians and scientists, closer together also, realizing we really have to work together. So I think it's been wonderful that the Foundation Fighting Blindness has supported this through the years. I think it's not a research tool. So when you think you're participating in research, you're actually not participating in research. And some people hesitate because, oh, I don't want to be part of research. It's for you. It's a tool for you. So it's a tool for patients to be identified, for further studies, for enhancement of knowledge, etc.
Yes, I thought this is something that Elise and I have had a number of discussions about over the years because, we are talking about research and the patient registry has been through all of the proper research ethics boards, approvals, so it's classified as a research initiative, and that's why there's actually a very formal process of consent that if you are a patient and you want to enroll, you have to go through this formal process, and I think that actually that process can be very intimidating when people sort of think, oh, am I signing up to sign up for a research study? But so that's why I'm always talking about the registry more as a database. And part of the signing up for it is saying, well, if there is a trial that I might be eligible for, I'm going to consent that you can contact me just to tell me about it. So it's more consenting to be contacted.
So if I can just comment, the reason why there is a consent is because of the privacy laws, and it's because you're transferring your information to be de-identified. So you're consenting for your information to be de-identified, but to be accessible in a de-identified way. Sometimes when we publish, even if we just put a fundus picture of a person, sometimes we need to have consent, as if someone could recognize an individual through a fundus photo. But that's reality. And so the patient has to be very protected, and the way of doing an informed consent is actually informing the patient of the process. So I think it's appropriate to have an informed consent. Vaishnavi, do you have any comment? Because she runs really the registry.
Thanks, Elise. Hi, everyone. I'm Vaishnavi. Many of you may have heard my voice over the phone or contacted me by email. So I think one of the things that many of the participants struggle with is understanding what the registry is about. So Elise has clarified a big point on that. And secondly, it would be lovely if people could actually update their contact information once they sign up for it, because a lot of times when participants are eligible for a clinical trial, I realize that their contact information may be out of date. And even calling me and speaking to me over the phone actually alleviates a lot of the doubt, because they have questions about, okay, I'm giving you this information. Supposing my physician writes something on the note, will that be public? Can I access it? And those questions need to be asked, because there's only so much we can put on an email and not many people can read, and we need to actually address that kind of, those kind of hurdles. So I think we'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has about the registry during this session.
Yes, that's great. Thank you for clarifying. And I know we have a process in place to kind of initiate the enrollment process through our website, our Foundation Fighting Blindness website. And often people will contact me or my colleagues and ask if their enrollment has been complete. But because all of the your personal health data is private, your enrollment can only be confirmed through the actual site where the enrollment happened. And so actually that leads to my next question. And the patient registry started at the Hospital for Sick Children. And initially everybody across Canada was enrolling through that central site. And then my next question is for Dr. MacDonald. Maybe he could talk a little bit about why it made sense to kind of add the first new enrollment site in Edmonton, and what that kind of means. Elise highlighted, Dr. Héon highlighted the importance of bringing together our vast geographic country and trying to find connections and make the community smaller. So perhaps, Ian, you could speak about how it works with a local enrollment site.
So thanks very much, Mary. I really bought into this very early, that this would be a great avenue for the patients to link in a meaningful way to research. Because many people would ask in the course of discussion, is there anything being done for my particular disorder? And so my knowledge base is only so much, and I many times would say, well, I'll have to get back to you on that one. But for the patient and for the family, they would like to know that they're being active, that they're being seen, not just by me, but they're potentially being seen by anybody who would want to see a patient with a particular disorder across Canada, because they had an idea that they wanted to test out. Maybe a drug, maybe just knowing how many cases of achromatopsia are there in Canada. And there was no way to do that locally. And so having the registry would then put those individuals into a list where their information was there, not their name, simply a number that would link to the clinical file, so that they knew that if there anything that was coming out on new treatments for X-linked retinitis pigmentosa, for example, that their name would be in the database and they would be potentially contacted by somebody even outside of Canada. We're looking for males in between the ages of 25 and 35 with a specific mutation. And in fact, that is what has happened. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was very important for our patients in Alberta, initially just Edmonton, but then we included Calgary, and then occasionally we would have patients from BC and Saskatchewan who would also be included. It's awkward sometimes because you have to ask permission, not from the patient, but you have to ask permission from our local Health Research Ethics Board, and they are somewhat insistent about having just Albertans, but early on, you know how people are. They have rules.
They're upset about the snow, I think.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, they'll want to know every year, well, how many did you enroll? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So we have to get out the sheets and say, okay, we enrolled 25 last year. And so they'll want to update it continually. Were there any adverse events that happened? Nope. Nobody got hurt. I better stop.
Databases are dangerous things, yes. I guess my next question is for Dr. Robitaille, and part of what we have been working on with the patient registry is to make sure that patients who are living across Canada actually have a local site. And Dr. Robitaille leads our site that serves all of Atlantic Canada. So although she's based in Halifax and at the IWK Health Centre, she does serve as the hub for all of Atlantic Canada. So I was hoping, Dr. Robitaille, that you could talk a little bit about perhaps the challenges of serving Atlantic Canada, and also Dr. Robitaille has really emphasized the importance of including your primary care doctor in the whole process. So perhaps you could speak to that.
So in the Maritimes in Atlantic Canada, a lot of the management of patients is actually co-management because people have to travel long distances. So we try to, when they do come, they often spend 1 or 2 days just going test after test, meeting medical genetics, meeting genetic counselors, everything that they need so as to help gather as much information as possible to, one, make a diagnosis, and also, if possible, have access to genetic testing. And we also talk about the registry and try to be as comprehensive as possible. But after that, the patients go back to their primary care ophthalmologist, and they will only come back if the ophthalmologist says, look, something changed, I'm not really sure what to do with this, and so can you see them again? And so they only come on an as-needed basis, which means that a lot of the information that goes into the registry is gathered at different time points at different locations by quite a few people, especially for the people who come from far, or if they've moved along the way in the Maritimes, but there's a lot of movement between the Maritimes and Alberta, back and forth. Yeah, they are coming back. But that creates a specific challenge for us, because when we consent our participants who are interested in, and all of us, all of the patients I've offered this to, I don't think there's a single one of them who said no. Everybody, I think, before this happened, was craving for something like this to exist. And for us as well, I think from the patient's perspective, this is something that's been requested by patients, but from our perspective as well as clinicians, these are extremely important repositories of information. Every one of those diseases, the challenge of working with rare diseases is that in my practice, if you're doing a diabetes clinic, all the patients are the same. You'll get to a lot of expertise with one disease, but every patient in my clinic has a rare disease. They're all different. And if something's a little off and is a little not quite typical, they'll ask me, so what do you think? Very often I say, I don't know, I'll get back to you. So I have to talk to a lot of people to be able to get information. We send emails out, we come to conferences. This is very, I'm very happy that you invited me, because this is a very useful for me to, it's useful for me to be here to get information from you in a way that is different than what I get in clinic. And so I learn a lot when I come to Vision Quest, and I'm very happy to participate when I do get invited.
Please, we'll take it.
But our issues in the Maritimes is that once we consent the patient, we have to get the information from a number of sources. It takes a long time, and then the number the measure that's written may not be equivalent from one clinic to the next, and they're not taken on the same date either. So it's very difficult to get a cross-sectional view of a condition at any one time to enter into the database. And so I think it's important that we have our own database. So when we're looking at our own data, we know the quality of the data, where it's coming from, and is not mixed with everybody else's. All the provinces, all the regions of Canada will have a different model because of the distribution of the population, because of the access to care is going to be different, and the healthcare system is different as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that you took the time to kind of describe the great care that is put into making sure that the data is good, that the data is correct, and there are many different kind of checkpoints to make sure that the data that goes into the registry, that's your medical health data, is an accurate diagnosis and an accurate depiction of perhaps a very rare disease that you might have. So I appreciate Dr. Robitaille goes to great lengths to consult with colleagues and make sure before this data is entered into the registry, let's make sure it's as accurate as it can be. And I think this is, Dr. Johane was talking about the great pride that the entire team takes in kind of their dedication to build the registry year after year and to make sure that the data going in is good, because as in this kind of exciting new world of data that we live in, I mean, the database is only as good as the data that's in it. And so I think I want to highlight the great care that's been put into ensuring that the data is good. And so on that note, I was hoping I was going to direct the next question to Dr. Héon, because, we're talking about databases and patient registries, and I asked her at first to kind of reflect on what led to the creation of the patient registry. And over the years, we've kind of thought about, well, patient registry, it's not really the best name. Is there a more exciting thing that we could call the patient registry that wouldn't seem that people are signing up for some crazy research initiative? But I think there's actually great importance in the term patient registry, because it is something that has been very, very helpful in other disease areas. So I was hoping, Dr. Héon, you could talk a little bit about why patient registries are particularly important for rare diseases like inherited retinal diseases, or I believe that you were mentioning talking with colleagues, and I think you were looking at one of the rare heart disease registries at Sick Kids when you were thinking about the design. So it's something that's kind of a best in class. If you could address that.
So first about the name, just there's dictionaries. And it is a registry because it is a registry. It means the definition of a registry. So we can't really call it anything else. And if we changed it, we'd have to change all the consent forms. And that would be...
We're not changing the name.
And I would lose Vaishnavi. We'd all be really annoyed to that. So it's going to stay the registry whether people like it or not. I'm not too sure what you want me to say, but
I think just talking about why registries are particularly important for rare diseases, research on rare diseases.
Well, because they have no other ways of being identified. Patients have no other ways of being identified. The conditions we deal with are a bit peculiar in what Johane mentioned, is that there's a great heterogeneity, there's a great mix of patients under a common vague umbrella, for example, of RP or macular degeneration or maculopathy or whatever you call it. There's a lot of misnomers that are used for simplicity of communication, but that may not reflect really what's going on. And the value of the patient registry is to bring precision to that. And it's sort of like your eye passport, really. It's a compendium of your eye passport. So what we try to do is to clarify the clinical diagnosis, but also to link to it the genetic diagnosis, and that be cataloged in a way. It's like a catalog. And all rare diseases, or actually most rare diseases of any, I shouldn't say significance, because they're all very significant, but many diseases like cystic fibrosis, congenital heart disease, Parkinson, all that, registries have been developed nationally in different ways for this reason, for allowing patients with that specific diagnosis to be identified. And it also brings patients together. So once in a while, we haven't been like thoroughly organized, but like we could send updates to patients who we know exactly what they have, so there's less confusion. Sometimes if we just use our clinical database or like our charts that may not carry all that information, sometimes we contact that patient and they say, well, actually, I don't have that. And so I think the registry is a filter diagnostic precision. And rare diseases being uncommon, it allows them to at least be identified. Otherwise, they get diluted in the system. And sometimes, actually, rare diseases are not that rare. We call them rare diseases. That's also an official definition. But they're not that rare when we put them all together. And like in an ideal world, we'd like to identify everyone and characterize everyone so they can be identified and characterized. I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, that's a great answer. And just to build on that, this is something, one of the reasons why we've really been trying to raise awareness about the patient registry is because in addition to being a helpful resource for patients, it really helps us with our mission at the Foundation Fighting Blindness to show that there's a great need for more research, and there's a great need to develop new treatments, because although these diseases may be rare in your community, perhaps you live in a small town and you're the only person that you know with this specific diagnosis, when we put everybody together, they become a lot less rare. And so it really helps us to show that there really is a need here in Canada.
Can I add something?
Please.
So it also allowed us to audit our patient population. So when Ian spearheaded the clinical trial on choroideremia, Vaishnavi and I would look at the data and realize, oh gee, everyone with choroideremia has a molecular diagnosis. So we thought that was pretty cool. It would allow us to say, okay, so first it attests that the clinical identification of the disease totally correlated with the molecular diagnosis, and there was no gap. So everyone who could be identified was identified. So that's, I think, another purpose.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess actually that leads nicely. The next question I had was for Dr. MacDonald, and then shortly after that I'll open it to the floor. Because I think that Dr. MacDonald spoke a little bit about how he used the patient registry along with his own clinical database to help identify the most appropriate patients who may be interested to participate in the choroideremia trial that he was running. And this is something that the registry is excellent at. It's helping us to identify who meets the jargony term is eligibility criteria. And that's because when a clinical trial is a kind of experiment and you want to design it very, very carefully to make sure that the data that you get at the end is trustworthy, good data that's going to help move the field forward. And so it's not the case with a clinical trial, everybody line up and whoever shouts the loudest gets to go in, or whoever, puts their hand up or gets to the front of the line. Because a clinical trial is an experiment, patients have to be very, very carefully selected to make sure that they're the right fit for this experiment. So I was hoping you could speak a little bit about that, Ian.
I think you answered it.
You should have got the hook out.
Yeah. No, I think, but you've explained how we manage the choroideremia cohort, let's say. And it would be the same, I think, for all the other future clinical trials. So the companies that are developing the gene therapy or gene replacement vectors are interested in certain patients. And some of those patients need to have specific mutations, changes in the normal gene. And the registry keeps a copy of that. Mm-hmm. And so it enables Vaishnavi to tell me, yes, there is a patient with this particular form of, for example, Usher syndrome, mm-hmm. That may be eligible for that. And yes, we have them in the database, and so you can contact them. And otherwise, your information as a patient is very private. At least you'd hope that way. So it stays within a clinician's file in the clinician's office or in a hospital in the file, and that cannot be really accessed by somebody other than your physician, the physician of record. So I can't go into my colleague's file and say, oh, I think Bob sees lots of patients with that. Let me just see if there's a few in there. Mm-hmm. I can't do that. Privacy is such that there needs to be a mechanism, and the registry allows that because that patient has already consented not to release their name, but to release their information. Mm-hmm. And their information would have information as to the genetic change. It would have information on visual acuity. It would have information on visual field. It may have information on the electrophysiology. Why would I know that? Because I put it in. And so I would know that those key parameters are what is needed for the first phase, the let's say the safety trial, which includes a very small collection of patients with a specific diagnosis, with perhaps a specific mutation, with a set of parameters, vision better than, not worse than, visual field of a certain size that you can measure and that you can measure repeatedly. For those individuals who don't meet the so-called inclusion criteria, it doesn't mean that you're not eligible for future trials. It just means that you may not be eligible for the first trials that are showing safety.
Thanks for that. And I think after that, I'd like to go. Would you like to add something, Vaishnavi?
Oh, yes, a little quickly. So based on what Mary said, please don't think that the participants or patients don't have any say about being involved. So the first step is, of course, saying that I'm willing to be a participant in clinical trials and letting us know, so that we will just be passing on the information to you. We will not be releasing any patient information, any... Okay.
If someone says, well, we would like to access patients with blah, blah, blah genetic defect, what happens?
Sorry, could you repeat that into the microphone?
So Dr. Héon was saying, what is the process actually? So when someone first learns about the patient registry, the first step is making a decision to say, okay, I want to be a part of this because I want to be a part of the process in therapies in the future. And you will first go to the FFB website, probably get my information or Mary's information, and there's an online sign-up sheet. So many participants think that once they sign that sheet, they're automatically signed up to the registry, but that's not what it's meant for. It's just to say that you're aware of the registry and now you want to take the first step in contacting me. So I am the person who stands like at the doorway saying, okay, persons who live in this province or having this disorder can possibly contact the center in this place. So I'll probably direct you, or I will give the next set of information. So I'll send out an email with a consent form and a clinician data sheet. So what happens is most people actually call me, which I really appreciate, because it gives me an opportunity to explain what the registry is about, what people are getting into, and what it's not about. So basically what it's not about is me just handing over all your clinical information to the first person who's doing a clinical trial or doing research. I'm not going to be handing that out. I'm going to be creating a profile on the registry which is totally de-identified. So the patient information is just replaced with a number, and there are just key points on, say, the location and year of birth it's on the profile. And where this profile and where the registry is housed is at Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. So nobody else can access it other than the staff members who actually enter patients into the registry. And so that means that even patients are not able to go on there and check whether they're on there, because there's no way to link a profile with a name. So any other information that you might need, like say, okay, can I say register my daughter who might be interested in signing up? If you could ask me that, I'll be happy to help and send the information on, pass it on so that someone can sign up. So once the profile is created, that can be created only after I get the consent form. So most participants would like to know how to fill the consent form, and there's no need to do any filling. You just, I already have your contact information, if you've contacted me, just a signature in the last page, and then you send that to me either by fax or scan, or just take a picture, and I'll create a profile. And then the next step is to go to your ICAP provider and then get the clinical data entered. So this is also not a very extensive form, because many of them are very busy people. So it's just some basic information about the eye condition. If there was genetic results already there, then that would be filled in too, and they send that to me directly. So the ICAP provider usually faxes it to me, and then I add that information onto the registry. And there's also a physical binder which we house at Sick Kids in a secure location, so that if in the future we need to, contact you, we have that in place. And then, like Elise was saying, if there are any updates, or there is a company that contacts us saying that we would like people who fit this profile for a future clinical trial, then we can just get in contact with you, send an information letter saying, okay, this is out there. If you would like more information, you can contact me or contact the person like Mary usually. So then you go ahead and learn more about it, and you can take your time. So the power is actually with the patients. You can decide at your own time with your family whether you want to be a part of this, whether you want to go ahead, and that's all in your hands. So there's nothing to be apprehensive about, and of course, if there are any apprehensions, we are always here to help you with that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think I had some more prepared questions, but I'm seeing hands going up in the audience. So I think at this point, I'd really like to turn the tables to the audience for questions. And I believe we have a mic runner. Do we have somebody with a mic? And so, Margaret, I think the first question is here up at this table, the third table from the front. And
I'm pretty loud. I don't need a mic.
Oh, your mic is coming right here, just to make sure people in the back, we have a large room. Thank you so much.
You mentioned that you prefer if people call you, and I assume there's quite a few people who would be candidates for the registry. And to save them the time of having to go online, couldn't you just tell us your phone number?
Well, I could. Can I? Yeah,
of course.
If you would like to take it down.
Yeah.
So my number at Sick Kids is 416-813-7654, and the extension is 301511. So that's 416-813-7654, extension 301511. Yeah.
Get ready for some phone calls. Margaret, there's another question here, and then I see one on the table right beside.
Hello, I think you may have answered this, but how do I know if I'm already on the registry?
Yes.
Because I think I was put on back in 2004, 2005, right at the beginning.
So it depends on which center enrolled you. So if it was at the Toronto site, if it was at SickKids, you would contact me, either send me an email or call me and say, this is my name and contact information. Can I know if I'm on the registry? And I have a database that I can go through to link the numbers and see whether you're on there, and I can inform you.
I'm so glad that you asked that question, because I wish that I could check for you, but because your personal health data we keep it private. You can only check your enrollment. If Vaishnavi can only check if you've been enrolled if you were enrolled at the Hospital for Sick Children site. But if you happen to be a patient who lives in British Columbia or lives in Halifax, if you live in Halifax, you would have to check at the IWK site through Dr. Robitaille's research assistant. And if you are in Alberta, you would have to check through Dr. MacDonald's site. So I'm just highlighting the privacy is managed by the enrollment site, and it's all to make sure that your privacy is taken very seriously. And so, Margaret, there's a number of questions popping up. Anne has one.
Hi, Mary. Can you talk a little bit about how it's important that although someone has a family member, maybe they're in contact with the Foundation Fighting Blindness, but they have an uncle, 2 cousins who also have RP, and they say, well, I get the information, I pass it on to my family, and how that they say that they don't understand how important it is for the entire family to be in touch with the Foundation Fighting Blindness and to also be in the patient registry. And from what my understanding is that being in the patient registry and growing the numbers in it will help attract industry partners who want to actually do clinical trials in Canada. So maybe you or one of the panel members can speak to that.
Yeah, it's such a great question, Anna, and that's why I'm really excited about the program today, and that after our break, we're going to actually have a panel with industry experts who are, actively conducting clinical trials, planning to do clinical trials, and, it's really powerful when I can speak to people or the investigators can speak to people and say, we would love to have a site here in Canada, and we've got 80 patients with this specific genetic diagnosis, and just because they've signed up, we know that they might be interested. So there's incredible power in numbers. And we know that, some basic extrapolation, I hope that the esteemed panel will correct me if I'm wrong, but we project there should be about 10,000 people with retinitis pigmentosa living in Canada. So although there's about 800, maybe 600 or 700 in the registry, we really want to find the other 9,000 and make sure that they're in there, because then it makes all of our job that we're doing together to drive the development of treatment so much easier. So it's just, there's such power in that number, the number of people that are in the registry. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
So just to add to that, like you were saying, a person who enrolls to be on the registry signs a consent form, so it only enables me to contact that person. So if that person has, say, a brother or a sister who's affected, it doesn't automatically entitle them to be involved in the research, right? So that's why we encourage our patients to spread the word. If they do have someone, like you're concerned about your daughter and they want to talk to us about, in the future I would like to be involved in research, at least I'd like to know about it so that I have an option of choosing whether I want to go ahead with it. So we would encourage more people, even if they feel that they want to know about it, to contact us so that they can get to learn about the registry a little more. Dr. Héon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and we really felt about the importance of having this panel discussion at this point in time because, as Dr. MacDonald was saying, this year we have been using the registry to contact patients about clinical trials that they might be eligible for. So this moment that we've been planning for 14 years, I mean, this moment is now. So, you know, it was so, Vaishnavi and I were so excited, like getting ready to do the letters, but we want to do it right, we want to do it ethically. We're checking all the right boxes, getting all the right approvals. So we always want things to be faster, but we have to make sure that patient safety is right at the very heart and center of the process moving forward. Another question?
Thank you. Sorry. I think the big challenge for a lot of people, and I think the doctors are all aware of this, is the push and pull that comes for patients. The pull to a registry, of course, is for someone to be registered and be able to be considered for potential therapies. However, the push part comes on the part of people like myself and my colleagues who've been around this for a long time as an affected family. And until you reach the stage, and I recognize that I'm on this side of the line and not this side, where your disease is so evident that you have, quote, come out of the closet, and it no longer do you have to worry about it impacting your employment prospects because it already has affected your employment prospects. You're on this side. And so if for families like ours who face young grandchildren, who have young grandchildren who face the potential of being affected, you have a couple of issues. We've got this wonderful law, which I was also working on behalf of, but I'm still not confident that if a diagnosis took place before that, then insurance companies, et cetera, can't access that data. So there's hesitation on my family's part about the fact that a young child has been identified through the genetics department at Sick Kids. So before you answer this, my question is, who has access to that? Can an insurance company access that? If that child was inadvertently registered for disability insurance or life insurance by their parents who didn't understand that in fact they perhaps violated an insurance document by saying the child wasn't impacted, but the child was impacted, is there ever the potential for the insurance company to come back and check? Or are we now at that really safe point where client documents really truly are confidential? Like, I like what you're telling me about being matched with a number, and I'm aware of all the challenges that we all deal with, good and bad, daily with the privacy laws, but I'm still really concerned about confidentiality, particularly for young people. And then the other part of that is there any value for a child who has been diagnosed and probably is too young to be told yet anyways, and that's ultimately a parental decision, to be in the patient registry at this point, recognizing that a lot of the experimental treatments, et cetera, you have to be at least 18. So there's two questions there. Thank you.
So one of the issues about consent implies that the patient is over the age of 18. If you're consenting a minor, there's usually another form called assent, where the minor, depending upon their understanding of the disorder, needs to give their permission as well. So there's that built-in aspect. But of course, if it's an infant, and you're talking about an infantile form of blindness, then the consent would be from the parents. To my knowledge, I mean, I've been in practice for, I can't remember now. But I've never had an insurance company contact me out of the blue. There needs to be consent, a written consent from the family. And I am contacted by lawyers occasionally as well for information, but of course that has to include consent as well. And I'm also contacted by mothers about their over 18 child, and I can't transmit that information either. So even in between families, I have to be very careful. I have to be extremely careful. And unfortunately, things happen in families. I have a family, and so I know that things happen in families. So you have bad days and good days, and so privacy is utmost. And yeah, there may be some boobs that we have along the way, but that transfer of information requires consent, and it usually requires written consent. So I'm certain that the Genetic Non-Discrimination Act, as it was first rolled out, let's say, in the United States, and then replicated here in Canada, is going to be very important for the future, because under no circumstances should we be depriving people of access to insurance or care based on their mutation, let's say. I hope that answers a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Johane would like to add.
I think you had a concern about the being part of the registry, that offering the insurance companies access to private information. But the answer is no, because the information is already in a chart, in a medical chart. And what you sign when you get insurance, with the box you check off, is that you allow the company to access your health records. So they don't ask me, this goes straight to health records, and they will go through the health records. What they are not allowed to do is use that to not give you insurance or raise your insurance premiums. But they are not allowed to access anything that is research. And so for a long time we were keeping these things separate. So that registry, the information in the registry is actually not accessible for anybody, but they have access to your health records, and what is in your health records is what goes in the registry anyway. So the registry is not the source. It's not going to be the source, it's going to be what's in your health records. Yeah, so that part is, you can be confident that the information that gets transferred to the patient registry is they're not going to be able to sift through that.
Thank you, Johane, for making that comment. I just want to reiterate and explain the importance of this, and explain how can outsiders access the registry. So there's a steering committee. So usually Mary would call us and say, so-and-so wants to access the registry. And we say, why? And then there's a steering committee that validates the why. And should an insurance company ask to access the registry, Mary wouldn't call me. She would say no.
No. Yes.
So, so let's say that we said yes, not to an insurance company. Then there's like many barriers. So then no one can get to your information. What we would do is, like we're doing in some situation, sending you a letter saying this person or this company or blah, blah, blah is interested in this project to which you may be eligible. If you're interested, you can contact this person or call Vaishnavi and she'll explain what it's all about. But like, there's a huge, I can't say enough how there's a huge barrier on the access to the information from the registry perspective.
And that's because we don't want to, as Dr. Héon said, we wouldn't give an insurance company access to the registry data, but also, and it's such an exciting time with so many clinical trials happening, and I have to emphasize this is something that Dr. MacDonald's colleague, Dr. Bubella, taught us, that unfortunately there are many trials out there that have not met basic safety standards, they have not met basic ethics standards, and they might do something like let you enroll if you want to pay $25 $20,000 out of pocket. And those are the kinds of trials that we absolutely would not tell you about. And that is why we actually have a story on our website, and we have some disclaimers around to be very cautious when you are searching a database like clinicaltrials.gov, because there are a lot of trials on there that we absolutely wouldn't tell you about because they haven't met those basic standards. And so that's what you can be sure when you hear about a trial from one of the patient registry principal investigators, you know that is a carefully designed study that would be worth your while to sort of perhaps consider being a volunteer to participate in the study.
Sorry, can I just add one more thing?
Please.
I know you have a concern about the insurance and in the future what can happen. We can't really predict that. But what we can say as of now, there is no way for anyone else to access this information. First, because it's de-identified. Even if they were somehow to hack the system, get in, they see like 1235 and they don't know who that 1235 is. We don't put in any other identifiers other than the year of birth. So there's no way to link it to any records. The records are all physical paper records that are stored in a locked cabinet, in a locked office, in a locked building. I can go on. And the second thing is that if a person feels really uncomfortable, or when the child grows up and he or she realizes they've been enrolled and they really don't want to, they can always call us and say, you know what, I don't want to be in the registry, just pull me out. And then all their records will be removed from that. So there is that way to get out of the registry.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. And I'm aware that we've gone a little bit over time. I think there are more questions out there, but I ask you, if you have a question and you weren't able to get it answered during this session, please write it down and send it to me, and we will do a follow-up. We'll do some patient registry frequently asked questions that will make sure we get the answers for you. And I just wanted to take a moment for all of us to really thank the panelists, thank the clinicians for being here today, because they do so much to volunteer their time. So thank you. And before we break, I also wanted to just really acknowledge that, Ian kind of joked about, his time is free, and it is, as these incredible people volunteer so much of their time, and they have over the past 15 years to kind of make, especially the patient registry, this robust database that it is today. We make it free for patients to enroll. We don't charge anything, but it's certainly not a free database to maintain. So I really want to thank CIBC, which provided just the instrumental funding back in the early days in 2004, which allowed us to make this database a reality. And so I really want to recognize their early support and to thank them for coming back on as patient registry sponsors in 2018. We're so happy to have their support. And I'm thrilled that in 2018 we can also recognize the support of Heathbridge Capital, of AGTC, of Mira GTX. So I mean, it's so exciting to see the support building around the registry. And I'm actually going to steal these guys away for a steering committee meeting after Vision Quest, so that we can plan for the future. And so thank you again so much for being here. And I have to make sure that everybody knows that I insisted that we have cookies, healthy cookies, ordered for the break. So I want to make sure everybody has a chance to get their cookie and visit the exhibitors and enjoy the day. So thank you again to the panel. The break will go until 11 a.m. and then we'll try to start back around 11, and there's no concurrent sessions after the break. The next session will be right in here in 20 minutes. Thank you so much.